Pretty much the entire time he was there, I thought I was gonna die. This was gonna be it.
Both of them had a ski mask, dark clothing, shined a flashlight at them, and bound them in some fashion.
My response to that was absolutely not. You're not putting that around my neck. I don't care if you kill me, you're gonna have to do it right now.
For these offenders, the hunt is more stimulating than the actual assault itself.
He's doing things to prevent us finding physical evidence, which tells us possibly he has some knowledge of how sexual assaults are investigated.
And one thing I'll never forget that the FBI told us about, when we find our suspect, it's gonna be somebody that they're all gonna say it couldn't possibly be him.
Halfway between Chicago and St. Louis, Bloomington, Illinois is the classic Midwestern town. Bloomington and her sister city, Normal, are home to 2 thriving universities and a number of cultural attractions, offering a cosmopolitan feel with small-town friendliness. But all are not so friendly, and as Bloomington residents will soon discover, one of their own is on the hunt for victims. It's 3 a.m. and 25-year-old Christy Hasty is startled from a sound sleep.
The first thing I remember that night, I woke up and there was a light in the doorway. I looked at the doorway and I saw a silhouette. And the first thing I did, I said, "Who's there?" I'm thinking I may be dreaming, not quite fully awake. And the next thing I know, he's on top of me, his hands on my mouth, flashlight in my face. "Don't move, don't scream, I don't want to hurt you. I'm only here to burglarize you." I don't know what he's gonna do, but I'm positive it's not gonna be good. I actually laid there kind of frozen going, this isn't real, this is a nightmare and I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna wake up and this is all gonna be gone. Except my eyes were open and I knew it wasn't.
Christy's attacker immediately begins to restrain her with what seems like well-practiced skill.
He got back up on the bed, rolled me over, had me do the put your hands behind your head, and then took them one by one down behind my back and put like a zip tie around my wrists.
He then places duct tape over Christy's eyes and mouth, making sure that she's unable to see or scream.
He actually taped around my head with the duct tape, rolled me back over, and I jerked because the shooting pain went up my arm. It was too tight in the way he laid me back. So he rolled me back over, cut the cable tie off, and used duct tape on my arms. And I kind of screamed. Not that you can scream much with your mouth duct taped shut. He said, "Don't make any noises or I will shoot you. Your neighbors are all sleeping. They won't hear anything. I will shoot you if you make another noise."
With her eyes taped shut and a pillowcase over her head, Christy is terrified.
And then I heard his clothes moving. And I knew at that point in time that he wasn't just gonna rob me. He was gonna rape me. Felt like forever. It could have been hours, it could have been minutes. It felt like my whole life right there. Pretty much the entire time he was there, I thought I was gonna die. All the different things that I always wanted to do in my life, this was it. This was gonna be it.
And if things aren't horrifying enough, Christy's further taken aback by her assailant's incessant questioning.
I don't know if he was trying to keep me calm, but things like, do you have a boyfriend? Where's your boyfriend live? Do you live alone? It almost seemed like he already knew what the answers were gonna be, you know, especially to ask me while my mouth is taped shut.
The attacker then goes on to tell Christy unnerving things that make her suspect that he's been watching her.
I didn't notice that I was being watched specifically, but you kind of get that feel, that tickle on the back of your neck, that somebody's looking, somebody's watching. But I always tried to play it off, is that you're being, you're being a girl. You're overanalyzing things. You're trying to make up things that aren't there. Relax. Don't be paranoid.
After almost 45 minutes, Christy believes the worst is over. Then her attacker says the words she's been dreading all along.
We're gonna go in the other room. And he led me by the arm into the bathroom, and I heard the water running. And I thought, this is it, I'm gonna die. He's gonna kill me in here. And not knowing where he was, not knowing what he was doing, just made it that much harder, because then I didn't know he was gonna come. But I really thought he was capable of doing it.
Sexually assaulted, threatened with a gun, and now faced with drowning, Christy is beyond terrified.
I start panicking. I start crying, and he's like, it's okay, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna hurt you, you're gonna be fine. I'm just gonna have you sit in the bathtub for a minute. And he cut my arms loose.
He then orders Christy to scrub her body clean.
I'm sitting here in the bathtub. I have no idea what's going on. I'm terrified. I don't know if he's gonna come back. I don't know if he's, planning to kill me. I don't know at this point in time what he's gonna do.
Little does she know, her assailant is busy covering his tracks, gathering all of Christy's bed sheets and blankets to take with him.
When I finally think that he's gone, I get up, step out of the bathtub, rip the pillowcase off my head, rip the tape off my eyes. I'm shaking, I'm terrified, I'm afraid he's still there somewhere and he's gonna come back in the room and find me. I couldn't get the tape off of from around my head. So my mouth is still taped shut. I run in the kitchen, I find some scissors, trying not to stab myself in the chin as I cut the tape off. Hair and all. And I grabbed the phone and called 911.
Bloomington 911.
Christy is then faced with the difficult task of replaying the entire incident for police and doing her best to provide a description of the attacker.
The victim is the key to profiling an offender because the victim is our only conduit of information. She's the only one who knows exactly what happened, so we need to get every single detail from her. And that includes the verbal behavior of the offender, what he said, and if he forced her to say anything, the physical behavior, which is the amount of force used against the victim, and the sexual behavior, which will be the type and sequence of sexual acts forced upon the victim.
Well, I can't really describe how it can just rip at your heart when you're listening to a victim tell a story about what happened to them, how in the middle of the night a stranger came in and stole their innocence. I mean, and just to see how it devastated her and how you knew it was going to affect the rest of her life, it was horrible.
Despite some gaps in Christy's memory, one detail about the attack is burned into her mind.
I noticed his eyes. When he was first on top of me, that's all I could really see were his eyes, because he's telling me that he'll shoot me. And they stuck with me. They always stuck with me. I saw those eyes in my nightmares. Still do.
It's not a lot to go on, but Christy soon offers another observation that gets investigators' attention.
Christy believes that the offender in this has done it before. She said that he was planned, he had a process, he seemed to want things a certain way, so that told her that he'd done it before.
And as Bloomington police review the specifics of her attack, they can't help but note that some of the details sound eerily familiar. In fact, 4 months earlier, less than 2 miles away, another brutal rape occurred, and authorities have yet to identify a suspect.
Both of them had a ski mask, dark clothing, shined a flashlight at them, and bound them in some fashion. and the conversation that the suspect had with them, asking about their boyfriend. Yeah, I'm investigating the two as if they're related.
The idea that there may be a serial rapist on the loose is alarming, to say the least. But police know all too well that identifying a suspect will be no easy matter.
We'd like to think we'll know a rapist when we see one. We want them to drool and drag one leg behind them, have a hunchback, one eye in the middle of their forehead and all that. The tendency is to think they must be horrible all the time, but the reality is they're not.
While investigating the rape of 25-year-old Christy Hasty on the east side of Bloomington, Illinois, police begin a top-to-bottom review of a similar case that occurred 4 months earlier, just a short distance away.
This assault in April 2003 was similar to the December 2002 assault, and both women awoke to a stranger in their room at their bed.
It's 1 week before Christmas, and 19-year-old Allison Majonier's roommate is away for the night. Suddenly, she's startled awake by a combat knife pressed to her throat.
I've been watching you.
The next 15 minutes seem to last forever as the intruder proceeds to rape and terrorize her.
He had a ski mask on, was wearing dark clothing.
Despite her ordeal, Allison's able to recall details about her attacker, a pot-bellied white male between 5'10" and 6'2", who puts a noose around her neck and blinds her by shining a bright light in her eyes.
He came prepared. He had a method that he wanted to follow. Actually had a pre-tied loop that he placed around her neck.
When we have a rapist, as we had in this case, who has what we generally refer to as a rape kit, with duct tape and zip ties and gloves and flashlights and all of that. Now we're talking about a very organized offender who is not only pre-selecting his victims, but is bringing with him to the scene everything that he needs. A way to think of sex offenders is on a continuum from impulsive to very predatory. And that certainly is way over on the side of a predatory offender who's cold and calculating and very premeditating. An offender stalks his victim or does it for a couple of reasons. And one is to pre-select the victim, to know as much about her and her living situation and conditions as possible. The other is the thrill of the hunt. For these offenders, the hunt is much or more stimulating than the actual assault itself. So it's a combination of those things.
4 weeks after the rape of Allison Majonier, Bloomington police throw themselves into the investigation.
We looked into neighbors, people that she might have had associations with, whether it be a maintenance guy or her taking her car to get fixed somewhere. And we didn't come up with anything that really told us that we had a viable suspect. So we really didn't have anything to go on at that time. It's frustrating knowing that you might not be able to help put closure to this case.
Now with 2 assault victims and a potential serial rapist on the loose, police need to move fast.
The fact that someone was coming into homes without any signs of forced entry. The fact that the victims were telling police that the perpetrator seemed to know information about them. That was extremely troubling to the police.
But it isn't long before they get a much-needed break in the case.
The day after Christie's assault, I noticed some detectives were working on a case involving a person that had passed some bad checks, committed some thefts. And in talking to them, found out that there were some interesting items in that case that could possibly be related to mine.
The suspect is a man named Carter Ellison, and police have already taken him into custody on the other charges.
I knew this person had prior burglaries and some other county involved, the theft of some women's shoes. Normally, there's no other reason for stealing women's shoes other than maybe a foot fetish. So it was sexually related. So I thought it was somebody that we could look at, because somebody that had done burglaries in the house might have moved on to actually doing a burglary and assaulting someone.
During a search of Ellison's home, officers discover a footlocker concealing a virtual treasure trove of suspicious items, including pornographic videos depicting the use of chloroform on women, duct tape, zip ties, and women's shoes.
It's not that pornography causes rape. If it did, we'd have a lot more rapists out there than we have. But what it does is it validates his behavior and reinforces the behavior. So these sort of violent rapists will be drawn to violent pornography, and that sort of fuels the fire and reinforces what they want to do, and reflects their sexual fantasies. And that's important because sex crimes are fantasy-driven.
While police search Ellison's computer for incriminating information, they also dig deeper into his past.
He'd actually been on the local Explorer post, which is basically kind of like a Boy Scout group that trains in police activities.
Ellison's training with the Explorer youth group could help explain the assailant's precise understanding of crime scene processing. But Wheeler has a hunch that Ellison's connection to law enforcement could go even further than that.
I'm trying to think how the guy could identify his victims, and this person had a friend that worked for the centralized dispatch. So I started wondering if it was possible if he could actually have his friend run license plates of people that he saw on the street that might be potential victims.
Since 1993, the FBI's Citizen Academy has given 10,000 community leaders an inside look at the mission and capabilities of the Bureau. The classes, taught by FBI special agents, include lessons in jurisdiction, policy, evidence collection and preservation, forensics, and firearms training. Two recent late-night sexual assaults on single young women in Bloomington, Illinois, have police concerned they could have a serial rapist on their hands.
People don't worry about attacks and murder in Bloomington. When they do happen, though, people are understandably concerned about them.
Authorities get their first break when a suspect named Carter Ellison is busted on unrelated theft and check fraud charges. But the news is bittersweet when they learn he may have an accomplice within the police department.
Once I find out that the suspect has a friend that's a dispatcher and could possibly be running the plates through him, I decide to contact the person that keeps those records to see if the plates have been run of our victims.
And it isn't long before Officer Wheeler's hunch pays off.
We actually found out that Christy had her plate run. It was a couple of months prior to her assault.
An investigation reveals that the plates were run from a mobile data terminal, or MDT, inside one of the officer's patrol cars.
It came back to a sergeant on the police department named Jeff Pilo. I ran into Sergeant Pilo on the squad bay, and I asked him if he recalled running this license plate of Christy. And he told me that he didn't recall running it. I told him what time the run had been, and he said that he couldn't have done it because he would have been in roll call at the time.
It's a strange coincidence, but not so far-fetched. The mobile data terminals are new and still have lots of kinks to be worked out. Anyone could have run the plate for any reason. And Pilo has no known connection to Ellison or his friend who works in dispatch.
There's so many reasons why a plate could be run. It could have been a stolen car with a similar plate, and somebody tried to run it and got a digit off.
After careful deliberation, the theory of a police department accomplice goes nowhere.
The leads as far as trying to show that he had a way of identifying these victims and where they lived and stuff didn't pan out as far as the plate run.
And that's not the only snag. After months of studying Ellison's computer, the case against him begins to unravel.
The evidence that we'd obtained and sifted through indicated that he was interested in sexual activity that just didn't seem to match what our suspects displayed in the assaults. So it kind of moved him down the list of, what we were looking at, because it just didn't seem to fit.
On December 22nd, 2003, Carter Ellison, their only suspect, pleads guilty to theft and check fraud and is later sent to prison. Suddenly, police find themselves back at square one. But as the investigation slows to a halt, curiously, so do the assaults.
You gotta wonder what made this stop when we have two within several months of each other, and then we go a year plus with nothing.
Meanwhile, Christy Hasty does her best to put the pieces of her shattered life back together.
I lived in hell basically for months afterwards. Didn't sleep for more than an hour at a time. Nightmares, panic attacks, just absolute terror all the time that I was gonna run into him again somewhere. He was gonna come back to my house and find me again. That no place was safe.
A little over 2 years since the first rape, Terry Northcliffe is asleep in her bed when she awakens to a man in her room. Like the prior incidents, the rapist binds her hands with zip ties and uses a pre-tied rope around her neck to control her. Then he brags that she's not his first victim and he's been watching her. The rape lasts over an hour. Afterwards, she's ordered to bathe, and before vanishing into the night, he takes everything he used in the crime, including her bed sheets.
He's doing things to prevent us finding physical evidence. Possibly he has some knowledge of how sexual assaults are investigated, either that or maybe a fan of watching crime shows on TV.
This is an unusual degree of criminal sophistication and evidence consciousness. In all of these decisions that an offender makes, that's one more facet of his personality, of who he is, and is telling us just that much more about him.
After Terry Northcliffe is treated at the hospital, she's interviewed by Bloomington police.
Here she's going through the most horrible moment of her life, and she's taken the time to memorize all of these aspects of her attacker so that she can relate it to us later on. Just a tremendous, tremendous job that she was able to do for us.
Terry reports that her attacker has a potbelly. And one other important detail: blue eyes.
She had described one eye as being lower than the other. That to me seemed to be something a little bit unique.
Police process the scene of Terry's assault. And though the rapist covers his tracks with unusual skill, he leaves a condom wrapper behind.
We were really hoping to get a fingerprint off the condom wrapper. No such luck.
But while the wrapper is clean of fingerprints, it gives police renewed optimism.
Makes me feel that hopefully he is going to be starting to make some more mistakes.
And interestingly, investigators note a key difference between the third assault and the first two.
That assault was longer and more complex than the first two, and what that led us to believe is that he's become more confident with what he's doing.
He's expanding his acting out against these victims. He's acting out on those fantasies more and more as he's getting more comfortable doing this, and I think more comfortable that he's not going to get caught, at least in his opinion.
As a next step, investigators begin a case-by-case examination of all predators in the surrounding area who've been convicted of similar crimes in the past.
So we started going through the parolee database, trying to find sexual offenders that are out on parole or might have been in jail during that time.
They confirmed that their earlier suspect, Carter Ellison, is still behind bars for theft, and he's officially dropped as a person of interest in the case. But despite an exhaustive search, police are unable to turn up a single new lead. Another 3 weeks slip by without a break in the case. Then, on January 25th, 2005, 27-year-old Sarah Kalmus returns home after spending a busy day with her family planning her upcoming wedding. Exhausted, she goes to bed a little before 2 a.m.
Approximately 20 minutes after I fell asleep, I awoke to someone standing in my doorway, and I just awoke to them rushing at me while I was in my bed. I sat up and struggled with him for a few moments, and he pulled out a gun and put it to my head and told me if I made any noise, he'd put a bullet in my head and then go to my parents' house and finish off every last one of them. And then he proceeded to recite my parents' address.
Since December of 2002, 3 Bloomington, Illinois women have been raped and terrorized in their own homes. And then one night in late January 2005, 27-year-old Sarah Kalmus becomes the rapist's next victim. She fights him, but he draws a gun and swears he will murder not only her, but her entire family if she does not quietly submit. The rapist then attempts to place a knotted rope around her throat, like a dog's choke chain, to control her during the assault.
My response to that was absolutely not. You're not putting that around my neck. I don't care if you kill me, you're gonna have to do it right now.
When the attacker moves to cover Sarah's head with a pillowcase, she tries to strike a compromise.
I came up with the idea of why don't you just lay it over my eyes and then I won't be able to see you.
Surprisingly, her assailant complies.
We see some negotiation going on there. That's all self-protective behavior on his part. In other words, he doesn't want her alerting neighbors, making a lot of resistance and screaming and kicking. So he's good with that. It's fine, and he still is able to protect his identity. Then that's fine. So he was willing to negotiate, at least to that degree.
But further resistance only provokes him. Overpowered physically, with a knife to her neck, she uses her wits to survive.
I eventually realized that it's getting so violent that if I don't start giving him the reaction that he needs to see, he's going to kill me. So throughout the whole thing, I'm thinking of basically 2 things. I just need to make it until tomorrow so I can see my family, and that if he does let me live, it's the biggest mistake he's ever made.
Sarah is brutally raped and terrorized for more than 3 hours.
He talked throughout the entire assault, making sure to let me know that, he knew my work schedule, he knew where I worked out, he knew what my little sister looked like and threatened her, where my little brother went to high school. He told me that he had attempted to break in before, and he told me that he had been following me around for 6 months. So now all these isolated incidents that I had kind of dismissed in the past are starting to make more sense.
Once he's finished, the rapist orders Sarah into the bathroom, and when the pillowcase covering her eyes slips aside, she gets a good look at her attacker.
I got a good look at the way that he moved, how he carried himself, exactly what he was wearing. I was mentally taking down notes.
It feels like an eternity before the assailant leaves Sarah, shivering in the tub.
Once I heard the shower start upstairs for our upstairs neighbor, I let myself out of the bathroom, noticed that the bed sheets were gone and the clothes that I had been wearing were gone.
After being treated at the local hospital, a shaken Sarah gives her report to Bloomington police.
I think I was interviewed for approximately 5 hours, and I just was trying to recall any and all things that may or may not be related to the assault. I believe I described to them that he had bright blue eyes. I definitely told them that if I heard his voice again, I would know it.
Still, with the assailant on the loose and no real forensic evidence, authorities begin to rethink their approach.
To think that we could now be looking at maybe him offending once a month, where was this going to stop? So we had to get something done.
Using the information they've gathered from the victims so far, Bloomington police consult with FBI experts to design a comprehensive behavioral profile of the rapist.
At this point, we have an offender who has spent a good deal of time targeting these victims. We also know that this progression of violence is there, and that's very dangerous and very, very troubling. Taking the sheets, taking anything of evidentiary nature, making the victims clean themselves, bathe, wash, all of this is telling us a lot about who this guy may be. This is certainly an individual with some psychopathic tendencies, meaning no guilt, no remorse, doesn't care about these victims, he's hurting them continuously.
It's also strongly suspected that the attacker is not your run-of-the-mill career criminal, but rather an individual leading a double life.
What's difficult to understand sometimes is an offender like this, as vicious and as horrible as he is in these assaults, can compartmentalize that personality, and it's not uncommon to have two different personalities, if you will. So this may be someone who on the outside appears quite differently than he looks if we look at just the rapes alone.
And one thing I'll never forget that the FBI told us about is that when we find our suspect, it's going to be somebody that the people he works with, the people he goes to church with, his family, they're all going to say it couldn't possibly be him.
There are some similarities that concern us.
Hoping to generate more leads, FBI agents recommend holding a press conference to inform the public of their findings to date.
After the community learned that police were looking into 4 sexual assaults that could very well be connected, the sense of urgency was heightened. The sense of wanting to protect themselves was heightened. You did not see people, particularly women, leaving their doors unlocked or unsecured. You didn't see women out after dark unescorted.
Investigators attacked the case with renewed vigor in an all-out effort to catch the rapist once and for all.
And the goal is now to have the whole police department armed with as much information as they possibly can so they're all out looking for him, instead of a couple of detectives knowing most of the details and then just hoping that something happens that helps.
For nearly 6 months, investigators turn up no new leads. Until one night in June, when a seemingly innocuous call comes into the 911 dispatch center.
Emergency.
Yeah, somebody keeps knocking on the door and running away, and my dog is going crazy.
Okay, what's your address, man? 10-4. Has someone knocked on her door. Can't see who it is.
Adam 22, 10-4. I'll be en route.
Hey, you, turn around.
The responding officer surprises a prowler hiding in the shadows near the home of 31-year-old Janelle Penn.
I yell, "Stop, police," and he ignores it and keeps walking towards the back of the house. At that time, I pull out my duty weapon. You know, I'm yelling, "Stop, police, stop, police."
Police, see your hands.
On June 10th, 2006, an officer responds to a routine call about a prowler in a residential neighborhood of Bloomington, Illinois. A serial rapist has been stalking women in the city, and police don't want to take any chances. When the officer checks the premises of Janelle Penn's house, he's surprised to find someone hiding in the shadows.
Hey, you.
I was pretty shocked to see that someone was standing there. I order him to stop. I yell, "Stop, police." He ignores my commands. He's fumbling towards his waistband. As he's walking away from me, I pull out my duty weapon because I think he's going for some type of a weapon himself.
Stop, police, let me see your hands.
When he turns around, I see that it's Sergeant Pilo, and I don't know what he was doing out here.
The confusion is understandable. Sergeant Jeff Pilo is a decorated 17-year veteran of the Bloomington Police Department.
What are you doing out here, Sergeant?
He tells me that he's looking for a house for his mother-in-law. He's dressed in black. It's the middle of the night. I didn't see any for sale signs anywhere around here. His story's not really making much sense, and he denies knocking on the lady's door.
All right.
The patrolman finds Pilo's explanation odd, but allows him to leave so he can take a statement from Janelle Penn.
I've been hearing really strange.
She's pretty frantic when I'm talking to her. She tells me that she heard someone messing with the screen on the north side of the house, and that's exactly where I found Jeff Pilo. That's when kind of a light bulb went off, and that's when I knew there was something seriously wrong with this situation, that it wasn't just, he wasn't out here looking for a house for his mother-in-law. He was up to something else.
Patrolman Zemer reports the bizarre encounter with Sergeant Pilo to his superiors. At first, authorities don't know what to make of it. But as they dig a little deeper, they can't help but notice that in some ways, Pilo fits the description of their serial rapist.
He's about the right height, he's about the right age, he's got blue eyes, definitely had a pot belly, he'd been trying to lose weight and had lost a lot of weight, just if things fit.
Being a family man, being married, being police officer of the year and all of this on one hand, but then if he is doing this, then he is exactly that type of offender who is compartmentalized his life and is leading this double life.
But despite similarities in the profile, some have a hard time believing that the 17-year veteran could be responsible for such a brutal string of assaults.
A few people wanted to see proof.
We interviewed every single officer on the police department.
Everybody said, ask me whatever you want to ask me. And that was to a man, including his best friend.
It's a difficult assignment, but slowly, investigators begin to build a case.
If there was anything that was a benefit of him working at the Bloomington Police Department, is for 8 hours a day, we could account for his time. I was able to go back and look at records such as when he's approving police reports. We pulled the license plates he'd run. We checked door swipes, work schedules, time cards, and all that stuff for this big puzzle.
It isn't long before Sergeant Wheeler is reminded of an incident from nearly 3 years earlier, when digital records showed that Pilo had actually run one of the rape victim's license plates. At the time, investigators dismissed it, but with new information in hand, they revisit the computer logs from 2002.
And we were able to show that he did in fact run the first victim and the second victim within approximately 16 minutes of each other. And that occurred prior to either one of their assaults.
Running one victim's plate could be coincidence, but checking two victims' plates so close together gets the attention of the rape task force. Sergeant Jeff Pilo is arrested 3 days later for attempted residential burglary.
People were just really stunned after an arrest warrant was delivered to Jeff Pilo. To think that someone who was hired to protect your community may have turned into a predator in your community was something that people had a hard time dealing with initially.
But the investigation is far from over. Convicting a decorated police officer is an uphill battle, and they'll need more than circumstantial evidence to make this stick. On July 13th, detectives show Sarah Kalmisgligi, who is now married, a photo lineup that includes Sergeant Pilo.
And I took a really good look and said, this is who was in my apartment. This was my attacker. There was such an immense sense of relief to be able to put a name and a face with this person was unbelievably helpful.
Christy Hasty has spent the past 3 years trying to put the attack behind her, but she too is brought in to ID the suspect.
I was moving on, got married, got a new job, and it was all back again. But that picture, that was the one. Those eyes had stuck with me all these years. I don't remember ever seeing his face, but those eyes I knew. I remembered those eyes.
While departmental records show that Pilo was off duty during all 4 rapes, shockingly, he was on duty and at Bloomington Police Headquarters while detectives interviewed at least 2 of the victims. But that's not all. In another sordid twist, investigators soon discover that Sergeant Pilo actually signed Sarah's police report.
Well, I think that for me was what my anger, if I have anger, it's just the fact that, he left my apartment, went to work. He was the sergeant on duty when I went in to report my rape. That couldn't be more of a slap in the face to everyone involved, I think.
On July 14th, with positive identifications from 3 of the 4 victims, the veteran officer is arrested again, this time for rape, including 25 counts of aggravated criminal assault.
I didn't do anything to anyone, period. Period. No, I'm done. I'm not talking to nobody about nothing else. If I'm on the veranda, which apparently since you read it to me, I've been accused of a crime, I'd like to know what the crime is. All right? I'm too pissed off to talk to you. I didn't do anything wrong.
Pilo denies any involvement. But during a search of his home, investigators find the crucial evidence they've been seeking for almost 3 years.
One interesting thing we found was in the garage there was a length of rope, a ski mask, and this piece of metal kind of shaped like a pry bar, like he had his own little kit right there.
His computer is also filled with pornography depicting the very acts he forced his victims to endure. Police even find internet searches for uniform rape.
Uniform rape is typically the sort of rape fantasy that involves someone in an authority position in a uniform. So it's this sort of pathological use of authority, not to protect or serve, but to dominate and exploit.
Ultimately, FBI forensic examiners at Quantico are able to link Pilo to the assault on Christy Hasty by matching trace evidence.
In this case, I started with the stereo microscope and examining the duct tape. And then I removed fibers from this duct tape and they were placed on glass microscope slides. There were 2 black polyester fibers that were hollow that were consistent with originating from a ski mask from Mr. Pilo's residence.
It was shock that, oh my gosh, this is one of our own guys. How could this be? At that point, anger, because it was one of our guys. And, being a cop is more than a job. It's, your way of life. And to see him, one of these guys doing this, because we sit in these interview rooms with these women and we're there as they're describing the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And, sorry, but just the anger that you feel that someone that you trusted, someone that you worked alongside, could possibly do that.
Jeffrey Pilo goes on trial in May of 2008. Just 5 weeks later, a jury of 6 men and 6 women convict Jeff Pilo on 35 charges, including 25 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault. He is sentenced to 440 years for his crimes.
I can't even process how good this feels right now. I think I'm still a little overwhelmed that we just don't have to worry about this person devastating any more lives. It truly is such a personal violation, and it's still kind of that silent epidemic, is that we still just don't have a public dialogue about the fact that 1.5% of men rape a third of women. And that to me says that we have multiple serial rapists that never go punished.
And it's important, I think, for people to know that no matter what happened, there's no shame in being a rape victim. There's nothing that you can do that makes it okay for somebody to do that. And that we can make it past, we can make it through.
One of the great attributes in this case is we had some strong women that were his victims in this case. And they were astute, they were willing to come forward, they made the complaint, and they were fearless in doing that. And they were the ones who really led to his identification. And ultimately, this is how law enforcement works best.